like Jay has seen my wife grumpy. She has never been grumpier than this scenario. It was Saturday and she was working all morning. She's like, I gotta take a nap. So I took the kids down to the basement and we were playing in the basement. Sure enough, 15 minutes in, ding dong on the door. By the time I get up there, she's opened the door and they're like, hi, can I talk to you about your voting options this year? And she goes, no. He closes the door on him. Oh my God. She was so mad.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate.
Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 71 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and I'm here with my one best friend, AJ Osborne. How's it going, AJ?
Dude, I'm doing good. I'm so glad that me and you could jump on here today and do this podcast together.
What are you drinking tonight, buddy?
I got my Diet Coke. I've got it in cooler. I'm trying to cut down using the plastics, So got a nice little cooler here, but Diet Coke.
That's very environmentally friendly of you. All right, should we jump right into this?
Let's do it.
You know, I was really confused when you said your one best friend. I couldn't think of anybody here that actually liked you, so I was waiting to see who you were going to call on.
And AJ, by the way, I'm disappointed in you, AJ.
Why?
I'm disappointed because today was the day that I was going to pull the AJ, and you didn't do it. You come up with the one day, and I have my drink in a red Solo cup, and you don't show up with the Solo cup.
I feel like I let you down now.
You did. Yeah, you did let me down.
Oh, wait, but you didn't let me down when you didn't show up in costume? When we talked about showing up in costume, and now I'm the only idiot in costume?
I'm in costume.
I'm in costume. I'm Tony Robbins.
I'm not going to disagree that you're the only idiot.
I knew you were going to go there.
Apparently, you guys did show up. You're just like, oh, we're going to wear black colored shirts. Ugh. Make sure it's slimming so we look good on camera. Ugh.
Listen, I came into this in a really bad mood, but I think I'm a little happier now.
That lobster outfit, Kyle, looks very good. It's very slimming.
I did have the Grinch outfit in for Mauricio because we all know Mauricio and his Christmas, but apparently you guys couldn't hear me talk. So
yeah, the mask has that effect.
In fact, I'm getting texts from our listeners. They want you to put the mask back on so they can't hear you talk.
Or see your face.
This is how we're going to start, huh?
This is going to be a fun episode.
I'm excited about
contrary to your belief, this is going to be one of our most fun episodes ever.
Well, not contrary to belief, but this is coming out on Halloween. So apparently we just have a bunch of, I don't know what the Scrooge version of Halloween is, of people who don't celebrate Halloween. But apparently we have three guys who are not in the spirit of Halloween. It's spooky season. And we had a whole thing planned with costumes. And we were going to talk about Alex's suggestion where like Japan and how they have like weird costumes and stuff. But like, no, it's just.
That's what I did. I dressed up as a normal person like they do in Japan. Look, I'm dressed up as
guys. This is America. This is America. YouTuber. This ain't Japan. This is America.
Well, Kyle did it right if he's in America.
Yeah, because Kyle is Winnie the Pooh, right?
Jay, are you drinking tonight? I'm only bringing this up because I think there's a chance that you're not drinking, so I can make fun of you.
The glass and the wine, as expected. Circumference cab from Costco. We only have about 3 bottles left in this case, so you only have to watch me drink.
How many bottles of wine do you drink a week?
Probably 2.
Jeez. You know how many calories that is?
I mean, my wife and I, between us, so it's like 1 bottle each. Average probably a glass every other night. How about you, Mauricio? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking my red Solo cup. I thought we were on some kind of like a fitness kick or whatever that you guys wanted to drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks or something, so that's what I'm on.
I'm down 7 pounds.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're drinking 2 bottles of wine a week?
Mauricio, weren't you supposed to be texting us too? Like, how do we know you're even involved in this?
I'm daily tracking on my fitness plan. I'll shoot you a screenshot of my fitness pal.
All right, whatever. Let's just get this started so I can put my mask on and go back to sleep.
There's so much steam. I actually think it's going to rain on your head. I'm a little concerned. There's so much steam going on in the head, and it's all getting trapped by Winnie the Pooh outfit.
This group chat.
I'm
This group
worried that
chat
it's
is going to be
gonna
the
rain
enemy. I was ready to throw my phone across the. We actually came up with topics on Friday. We were done. We were ready, and then all of a sudden, apparently 2 hours before, people are wanting to switch the topics when I've written the intro.
When you say people, who are you referring to?
So Jay brought it up. You voted
12 hours ago. 12 hours ago.
Jay brought it up. So that's the first one. Mauricio, you voted in favor of scrapping one of the topics. Not only one of the topics, the topic that you picked and you were supposed to intro, you voted against that. And that's the topic.
I'm like, hey, you guys don't want me to intro this topic. It's a legal topic. I don't know how excited people are about it. So I'm good with that. Let's just skip it and we'll do the other two. And then it became like
you were the one who was all arguing, oh, we need the weekend. We need the weekend to be able to get this ready.
I opened up the app. Like, I'm literally like on my way here from another meeting. I opened up the app and I just went, hell no. Delete it. I was like, no, not even.
Well, here's the cool thing. We argued for the last 10 hours over what topics we're doing tonight. But here's the funny thing. Kyle is the moderator. So we get to do whatever he is about to introduce. So Kyle, tell us what we're talking about.
I sure fucking hope AJ's still prepared for his topic because that's what's getting introed. So AJ, I'm going to give you two different news articles. They were released one day apart on October 23rd and October 24th. Okay. The first article says U.S. existing home sales dropped to a 14-year low in September, weighed down by higher mortgage rate and house prices. Okay. You got that one?
Got it.
Second article. Sales of new single-family homes increased to the highest level in nearly 1.5 years in September as buyers rushed to take advantage of decline in mortgage rates. Okay? So you got those two article headlines. Now, my first question is, do you think these articles are from different news outlets?
Well, because you posed that now, I'm saying I would hope so, but they're probably not now, huh?
They are both from Reuters, one day apart.
Of course, yeah.
I saw it on the Winnie the Pooh Times, but I don't know if that's a different article than Reuters. That's where I read mine.
My question to AJ is: A, how does this make sense? And I forget the second. Just does this make sense? Go, AJ.
There's two things going on. Home sales slide to their 14-year low, and then home sales highest nearly in 1.5 years, right? So this is the problem, especially when you get into homes and like what data you're looking at. A perfect example of this is if you look at the housing market today, some of the numbers make it look horrifying. Like without the context, you can literally think, oh, we're having like this massive real estate crisis. Why? Because we have a 31% increase in housing inventory compared to a year ago. Housing must just be crashing, right? And then you realize, wait, no, hold on. Housing actually increased 3.1%. And then they sound the way they're stated. They sound bad. But the point is, you're going off numbers that were already, like housing inventory went up from nothing. Like it's rising from nothing. So a 30% increase isn't going to vastly change the market at all because there's so much pent up demand. But two, you also have the problem with the financing part. It's not a normal functioning market. Houses aren't trading. So home prices are still high because we have inventory that is very, very tight. And the ability for people to trade over their homes right now is really low. But all these people know if you can say we have a housing crash or a housing boom coming, it's going to get clicks, right? So the question being is now, is one of these, when you look at U.S. new home sales, highest in nearly 1.5 years. Well, 1.5 years, that's taking it from right when interest rates spiked, right? That was the peak when interest rates were going up.
Hold on a second here. Did you guys read the articles? One of these articles is talking about existing home sales. So houses that were built that are being resold. Somebody bought them previously, were living in them, and they resold them. The other article is talking about new home sales, meaning houses that were just recently built. These are two separate groups of inventory. They're two different buyer demographics. They're different markets. So that's like saying cars went up and sales of eggs went down. They're two.
No, they're more connected than that, though. Like to act
Obviously,
like
they're more connected, but they're different products.
Yes, but just because they're different products, what I'm saying and illustrating is they're trying to create a theme. So they're creating a theme about the housing market around a subset of numbers and data. So they're extrapolating it to exaggerate a point over a subset point or data that is grossly taken out of context. So it makes it look vastly different than it really is, right? You read those headlines and you see these articles and you're going, what? Like what's going on here? Because this is they use these big things like slide to a 14-year low, right? And then you look at the next one where it's like highest in nearly 1.5 years, which the highest in a year, why would you, the highest in a year? It's like, that doesn't mean anything. But yes, new homes versus existing homes. Now, but once again, the truth of the housing market, when you look at it, when you're not taking it overall, I think the important points out of both of these articles, when you're looking at the new homes and new homes hitting the market, this is really probably the most new homes being built, not current homes. That's probably the most important number to the housing market. Today, as it sits, outside interest rates, 30-year mortgage, probably the most important data we could look at is the new homes coming onto the market. The reason being is we have a stagnant trading market, meaning that the interest rates being high, people aren't selling their homes because they can't afford to buy a new one at the same price as what they're replacing. So outside new homes coming onto the market, there's not a lot of inventory to be sold. So you can have a housing market like even in 2008, where yes, interest rates went up, but all the people dumping their houses on the market to sell them because of those adjustable rates, that's where it crashed. It was a supply and demand effect, right? And if you do not get more houses on the market to buy, you're not going to affect prices. It's just not going to happen.
And just to be clear on one thing, I mean, both these articles talk about existing sales, right? So we're not talking about price. So we're just talking about sales of existing homes and sales of new homes. But one of the things that's going on a lot, which I think contributes to the increase. So again, to your point, AJ, it's a random time frame. Why pick 1.5? Why not pick 2.5 or half or 5 or 3 or since COVID? Like you could pick and choose whatever the stats are. But to me, what I was gathering from a lot of the different media outlets is that home builders have some flexibility to incentivize buyers to come in. Like if you're selling your existing home, you're selling your home. Like that's it. It is what it is. But if you're a builder where your profit margin comes into selling these last ones, you tend to give some concessions, or you have the ability to give concessions to the buyer. You can give them mortgage pay down. You can give them, closing cost assistance. You can give them free upgrades. You can give them all these concessions that you can't really give if you're just a regular person selling your home as an existing market. And that's what's going on. I mean, it's hard for people to buy homes, period, generally, forget about existing or new. And so home builders are coming in with concessions, which makes it a little bit easier for people to buy new homes versus existing homes. So I think that's part of the reason you're seeing a divergence a little bit on the data. But again, to AJ's point, we're picking and choosing, we're cherry picking the timeframes, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of elasticity, to use an economics term, in the new home market compared to the existing home market. And as you point out, Mauricio, there's a lot of things that developers, builders, new home sellers can do to get houses sold where it can be really difficult to see trends. So for example, if I'm a new home builder and I sell 2 houses, both at $600,000, identical houses at $600,000, but one of them is I'm buying down the interest rate and I'm adding on an extra home warranty. Maybe I'm upgrading the countertops and whatever. That doesn't mean those 2 sales are equal, though. If you look from an appraiser standpoint, who doesn't know all of these details of the loan, of the upgrades, of all of that stuff, from an appraiser standpoint, we have 2 equal sales. And so it can be really difficult. The other thing is we don't know if these developers are actually making money. For all we know, they're from a business strategy standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, they're selling off inventory because they have a loan coming due. Right.
Like that's their business model. Like if an existing home seller doesn't get the price they want, they can just stay in their home for the most part. Some people are forced to sell for a job or whatever, but a lot of them, I'm not getting the price I want, I'm just going to stay here. A home builder, they have to sell because a lot of them, like if you're doing it in phases, or Jay's point, if you have a loan coming due, like you need to get that money back out so you could keep your business going. You could build the next house. So, okay, if these ones aren't selling for what we want,
Their business model is literally set. Like it's like the business model because of interest rates and how that capital works. Most developers, because most developers don't use cash, right? They plan on a subset of houses to sell to get to break even, but then the remaining houses are the profit. So, like, let's say that you have a development where you have 100 homes. Well, you may have done the math and said 50 homes selling at $200,000. That's our break even. We can get rid of the debt and then we can sell the last 50 homes to make a profit. But now they're going, well, the housing market slowed down, but we still have this debt and all this to do. So maybe we'll lower the price and sell 60 homes or 70 homes, and we'll just make a smaller profit. We'll make profit on 30 instead of 40.
and to Mauricio's price, they can put up. Oh, you can get 3.99% financing on our house because they're willing to buy it down.
And it's the same. We talked about it before. It's the same, just kind of like a little bit of a divergent thing, but it's the same thing with rents, right? People always say, oh, the rents don't go down, or during the last big crisis, rents didn't really go down. And we discussed, I think it was when Brian Burke was on the show, we talked about how, rents don't go down, but people give, 1 month or 2 month rent concessions. So even though technically the rent dollar doesn't go down, you're giving away basically 12 months of rent for 10 months. And so there's ways to kind of not manipulate, but ways that kind of hide the real data, which is the lack of demand through these, concessions, basically, whether you're the landlord who's giving rent concessions or you're a home builder giving concessions on your last profitable homes.
The other thing to keep in mind is that with existing home sales, the time from contract signed to closing is generally 30 to 60 days. If I go and buy your house, Mauricio, in 30 to 60 days, I own your house and the sale is recorded at the price we negotiated a month or two ago. With new home sales, it's not always that way. So a lot of times we buy empty lots or we buy spec houses that are partially built. And so I could put a contract down on a new house today at a certain price and then close on that 14 months from now. And 14 months from now, the market could look completely different. I might be going through with that deal because prices went up and I'm still getting a good deal, or prices went down, but I'm still willing to buy it. We don't know the circumstances of the seller or the buyer, but it's very possible that there was a huge lag between the time this contract was put in place and the time that it actually
Well, actually,
closed.
Jay, I thought you were going to steal my reading here. And when you made a comment, did you guys actually read the article? I did, and I picked up on something really interesting. Is that the one article? It says, this is the quote: existing sales likely reflected contracts signed a month or two ago when mortgage rates were quite high. And then for new home sales, it says new home sales are counted at the signing of the contract. So this is both for September. So we're talking about, these are home sales that happened at the signing of the contract in September. So what are the mortgage rates were in September? 6.08.
Wait a second, for the new home sales, the signing of the contract or the closing?
Signing of the contract for brand new home sales. That's what they were counting. When you're talking about for existing home sales, they were talking about up to 2 months ago. So that puts us back in July from September. What was the mortgage rate?
Time out. When you say time of the contract might have been signed a year ago. Are you talking about the closing documents?
I'm just reading what the thing says. It says new home sales are counted at the signing of a contract,
which could have been a year ago because you sign well in advance.
But then, okay, it could have been, but then the article says these have spiked because of interest rates are so low. So I assumed that they were counting contract signings that happened in September because that was the lowest that interest rates had been. It's the basis of the whole article. So that's what I assumed. So the contract signings that happened in September, mortgage rates were 6.08. If we're doing existing sales where they say counted are from contract signed a month or two ago, 2 months ago, which puts us in July, interest rates were 6.95, almost a full percentage point higher. So we can look at this data and we could say, oh, maybe this is why these are higher. Or it could just be as simple as mortgage rates were a full percentage point higher. And all of a sudden they drop down to, if the average is 6.08, that means some people are getting sub 6. And I'm sure there were people who were just sitting there said, oh, if mortgage rates get down to 6 or lower, then I'm ready to pull the trigger. That was probably like, like you see it all the time with stock market where you have like those thresholds where they all of a sudden hits the thresholds and everybody buys or everybody sells. 6% could have just been that level that people all of a sudden were saying, hey, if mortgage rates get below 6, I'm pulling the trigger. And that's why we saw a spike in September. And if we looked at this exact same data that they used for existing home sales, if we look 2 months in advance or from now or from September, then we're going to see that same number of the spike in the existing sales.
It's interesting when you look at what all these numbers, because there's a few things that I think. First, 30% are cash. So 30% of the buyers are cash for houses. Only 2% are distressed. So 2008 was the last time we saw levels of transactions, right, or sales this low, which obviously was the housing crisis. But of that, right, the distressed amount of houses was much larger. Now, we have a market that is essentially frozen, and we do not have transactions. Demand, though, remains super high, and mortgage rates aren't budging. They've come down. How much have they come down? Like it's like nothing. Like
I don't know. I pulled it up. It looked like they were still kind of trending higher.
They're back at 7 today. They were down to 6.3, I believe, 6.2 maybe.
And so it's just freezing the whole entire market, right? And it's like, even though the Fed's coming out and saying we're going to lower interest rates, everybody's like, oh, housing prices are going to get cheaper, right? The market is really essentially frozen. And it's kind of like the whole entire market. I don't care. Even if you're a developer, you can only give concessions so much, right? There's only so much you can do for so long. So the question then becomes right, how does this market function as we move? It's one thing for a year. If you go 3 years out of a housing market that is frozen in the United States like it is today, that is going to vastly change the landscape of, our country and everything in between. Because as markets are frozen, though, we're not adding inventory. We still are adding population. We're adding population in both, obviously, new people being born, but people moving here, but really people coming of age that are wanting and needing, that are having families. And so it's getting worse. The more time this goes on, you're actually increasing the demand for the homes. So by the time that interest rates come back to be affordable, you're so far behind. This is what we saw in 2008. We saw this massive pent up or lack of supply because we had too much, and then everybody stopped building homes for years. And then since then, we've been behind the demand every year by a huge margin since 2008. So now we don't have homes because of the financial crisis in 2008 and the lack of inventory. We have qualified buyers, though. The people that bought homes today had great credit. They have low interest rates. They have jobs. Everybody's okay. So you don't have distressed assets, but you still have new buyers. You still have people coming of age. You're adding millions of people every single year to the housing market. So this is right now we look at it, and for a lot of people, it's just unaffordable, or it doesn't work. But the more time that this goes on, the bigger of an issue this is going to become. One that we can see eat into all different parts of the economy. It starts to get very worrying when you look at, I don't think interest rates are going to come back down that much. I don't think we're going to get another drop this year. Consumer demand's up. We're buying it. We're now worried about inflation coming back even in times like this. So when you look at that, unless we see a big change in interest rates, we're not going to move that needle. That gets worrying.
Yeah, but would you argue that long term they're not going to come down though?
Yes, absolutely. I've been saying that forever. I don't think we're going what we saw in the last 10 years. I do not think we will have another decade like that. I think they will come down, but I do not think we're going to return to zero. I just don't think we're going to do it. Maybe we will. I think that was kind of frankly a fluke. And two, they probably, from looking at it now, unless you were coming out, the only reason it worked for 10 years was due to the fact that we erased so much capital in 2008. So in order to get it, we need to erase trillions of dollars of money, right? That's why we could do it for so long, because we were coming out of the opposite of inflation, a deflationary cycle, and we'd evaporated capital in the market, just slaughtered it. Companies went under, everybody lost money in their houses, and every time somebody goes bankrupt and you have to write that debt off, that's money. So we lost actual money in hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars. So you can keep interest rates low and flood the market because you're trying to fill in a hole that already exists. We do not have a hole to fill in. It's the opposite. We are sitting on so much money right now. Every little inch of that interest rate has an effect, right? Hence the reason why the housing market's up. Hence the reason all that. And they're finding out you can't. They've done now twice. Last time they even mentioned lowering interest rates, boom, inflation shot up. Look at what's happening today. They lowered interest rates. Consumer demand's up. We have income. We're not getting any of those effects. You cannot drop interest rates when you have an economy like this. And we have so much cash. If you drop interest rates, any little bit is affected. It's not like 2008 when you have a hole, drop interest rates, and you actually take a while to climb out of it. We don't have any hole. We're already sitting on top of a big pile. Like I've said before, it's much harder to take trillions of dollars out once you put it in. It's easy to put $1 trillion into the economy. Really easy. It's really hard to get it out and almost impossible to get it out without massive pain. And we're trying not to have pain. That means unless we have lots of pain, we're going to see a long period of time where interest rates will not return back down to that level.
So AJ, and I know you've got this chart up, Jay, but are you taking I'm going to nail you down here, JJ, because you're not drinking in a Solar Red cup. Are you saying today on this podcast that there's no scenario where the Federal Reserve in an emergency measure lowers interest rates down to zero again per their new playbook?
If we lose the money, meaning we have to have bankruptcies. You have to have a crisis. They can only do it unless you evaporate. If you go and evaporate $10 trillion out of the economy, they can do it. But that's because they're trying to replace the money. But outside a major contraction, it's arguable that we've been in a recession. Look at spending, savings down, everything else. Even with those things, we're still so sensitive.
Yeah, but what happens when your financial markets drop? You have some crisis, and you 20-30% drop in the stock market. Banks start going into foreclosure. That's the kind of scenario where I take the position that I don't see any reason why, if needed, the Fed doesn't just come in with all kinds of stimulus. They'll obviously try and do some bank facilities and do some lending and all that stuff first, lower a little bit. But if they needed to, they've gone to zero before, and they think that's not a big deal. They can work their way out of it. And so the question that I have then is like, well, if interest rates do drop down to 0 or 0.5% or 1% because there is some kind of a crisis, does that follow that mortgage rates would then have to drop as well? And maybe that doesn't matter because people can't get a loan. Like, it's the same thing, right? So what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is when they drop it, the short-term effects aren't usually there. Why? Because you can't deploy it. 2008, when they dropped interest rates, it took years for that to actually take into effect because it takes people to borrow. So banks have to do what banks do. They have to leverage, they have to deploy capital. But if they do not have outlets, if you're in a recession and the economy is actually contracting and you drop interest rates down, the economy is still contracting. If expanding economy with low interest rates fuels up, right? That's why they had to bail out the banks. That's why they had to do QE, everything else, because they dropped interest rates to zero and it didn't matter. It didn't do anything, and it never was going to.
AJ, the cash you're talking about, I always think of the personal, the saving. I've just known the savings rate has been coming down and down. Now it's bounced off the lows here, but I mean, obviously it spiked during COVID because everybody was getting free money, and that saving rates has been trending down until recently.
I'm not really talking about in people's bank accounts. I'm talking in the system. We're talking everything from businesses, private equity. We're talking about pension funds. Because even though people's savings rate has gone down, I'd love to see during that same time that people's savings rates were going down, what their pensions did. I mean, we've hit sky high in the stock market. I bet you their pensions rose faster than their savings went down. And their housing went up. So they're actually probably sitting on more assets and money than they were.
Yeah, but on the pension side, you can't use your pension money to go buy homes or, if all that excess liquidity.
You can't really. People spend and don't save when their pensions are up. There's a direct correlation to if the stock market goes down, people feel less wealthy. So they actually start saving money because you're right, they can't just go use it, even though people do when they get into emergency trouble. There's huge penalties for it. But they feel more wealthy. And so they're way more apt to spend, to take debt on. And that's the same with the house. If you have a $200,000 home and your home price goes up 10%, you feel richer.
Yeah, I thought you were pulling. I was looking at the M2 money supply while you were looking at the pension funds.
Well, this is I actually pulled this up. This was just a chart. AJ said he wanted to see what the level of pension funds are, and that's something that Fred tracks. So a lot of these graphs that we're throwing up, it's from St. Louis Fred, and that's one of those things that tracks. So you could see that it had a little bit of a dip there in 2023, but now it's back up to almost all-time high.
So assets are up. That's the problem, is everything's up. So when you have an economy that has cash and mountains of it sitting on the sideline, assets are all up in value. Even though saving rates are down, that is far less of people that have savings in cash versus their pension, the stock market, their house, right? That's a far less bucket. They're more willing to spend it, but businesses still have money to deploy. They have lots of it, and they have access to debt because there is not right now a banking crisis. They may have to pay for it, but they still have access to it. So in order for the Fed to lower rates, and this is the problem with this soft landing idea. Oh, we're just going to have a soft landing, and then we're going to lower interest rates. I've been saying that's BS forever, because what do you do with the $5 trillion you just pumped in? They spent $500 million in the last, 3 weeks? The government spent $500 million, or $500 million, sorry, $500 billion. The numbers are so stupid now, it doesn't even make sense. They are spending more than we did in crises. On a normal economy, they're spending more than we did in crisis. So the government is just pouring money into the system. Everybody's got money. You can't lower interest rates in those environments.
Pop up those job numbers. Can't do that without spending money.
And yet, 1 week from tomorrow, we're going to lower. 1 week from today, when this episode's released, the Fed is almost certainly going to lower rates again. According to the market, there's about a 98.4% chance of a quarter point drop at the next Fed meeting, which is next Thursday. And
which they'll go through with what they said, but a quarter of a point drop, that doesn't.
Yeah, that'll send the 10-year Treasury up.
Yeah, exactly. We literally need that to come down. We need that to come down by 50%. It's to get anything back to where we were normal.
Have you heard that ridiculous story about what $1 trillion really is? Have you heard the story of, like, not a story, it's just a mathematical fact, but like if you
barely buys a senator these days, I hear.
Yeah. If you spent $1 million a day the day that Jesus Christ was born, and you spent $1 million a day from that day on till today, you still wouldn't even get close to $1 trillion. That's how much $1 trillion is. It's staggering.
It's unfathomable how much we are actually spending today.
But imagine how many camels you'd have.
A lot of camels.
All right, let's wrap this up. I'm getting bored. So
I think the audience is enjoying watching your Winnie the Pooh outfit. So I think you should maybe flare around a little bit.
Do you want me to put on the mask? Do you,
put on the mask.
Make you feel better?
Introduce the next segment, then put on the mask.
Okay.
Which segment are you going to pick?
I don't know. That's.
I'm ready. Are you ready, Mauricio?
I'm not entirely confident that Mauricio is prepared for his own segment, considering he voted against it.
I'm ready for either.
We're going to talk about tariffs.
So the government's finally trying to make things easier for real estate investors. Just kidding. FinCEN believes it's going to take down drug cartels by making residential real estate transactions more transparent. Some, including our resident lawyer, Mauricio, are calling this the Corporate Transparency Act 2.0. So back in episode 24, we loved the original Corporate Transparency Act. So I'm asking you, Mauricio, then why don't you tell us why we're going to love this one so much too?
You're going to love this one because Jay Scott loves this one. He can't wait to discuss this one. It's riveting. CTA.
Jay hadn't read the article an hour ago, so I doubt that.
And now that I have read the article, I still don't
he
care.
doesn't like it. So here's just as a reminder, because it kind of interplays a little bit. So the corporate, by the way, just as a reminder, the Corporate Transparency Act, if you have entities, right, LLCs, trusts, or whatever, that were created last year or before, you've got till the end of the year. You're down to like less than 2 months to get all of your, all your filings with the government, all of your personal information of the ownership and basically the beneficial owners of all these LLCs. You've got till the end of the year. So just as a reminder, but yeah, to Kyle's point, go back to episode 24 if you haven't heard of the Corporate Transparency Act. But apparently FinCEN wasn't satisfied. They didn't think that was enough to get all this information from you of all the entities that you've ever filed in order to fight, anti-money laundering and tax evasion and counterterrorism and all that fun stuff. So they've come out with, I call it CTA 2.0. That's not really what it is. What it is, it's an extension of the Bank Secrecy Act, actually. So there's already a law on the books called the Bank Secrecy Act, which generally covers, on the real estate side, anytime you purchase or sell real estate with financing. So anytime you have a bank involved or some financial institution, there's already some reports you probably didn't even know about, but they're making all these reports, especially if it's a suspicious report. They have those suspicious reporting things. So it's already going on. But
if you're a Canadian trying to buy U.S. real estate, you'd know about all those stuff.
There you go. Yeah, if only we had a legit Canadian on the. Oh yeah, we do have a legit Canadian on the show. He's wearing his Canadian outfit today. His Winnie the Pooh Canadian version, right? The Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yeah, that's the Canadian Winnie the Pooh is red. That's why you got it wrong, and you thought that my entire red outfit was Winnie the Pooh.
So anyway, so FinCEN thinks there's a hole in this whole operation. So they've got the Corporate Transparency Act. So now they know who owns all these LLCs, all these trusts, all these entities. But what they don't know is what's inside of them, especially if you're making transfers, real estate transfers into these entities that don't involve financing. That's what they're trying to cover. So anytime you make a transfer now, starting next year, it starts December 1st, 2025. Anytime that you transfer real estate from an individual or an entity into another entity or another trust, not only do you have to worry about the Corporate Transparency Act when you create those new entities, but now you've got to actually report this transaction, this real estate transaction, to the government. FinCEN is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is a subsidiary of the federal government. And essentially it requires anybody, we call them sort of certain real estate professionals, and there's literally a list in pecking order of who has to make this report. It's called a cascade, but it starts all the way from whoever signed the settlement statement. And if nobody signed the settlement statement, whoever prepared the settlement statement and who, filed the deed. And there's literally a cascade of like 7 or 8 people. Somebody on that list is going to be responsible for making this report, filing this report, which is a real estate report that has to be filed. Now people can get together and kind of designate one person to actually make the filing so that not everybody's trying to figure out, pointing fingers, you do it or you do it. But essentially it covers residential real estate. So it does not cover, self-storage, multifamily, all that fun stuff. But it really does.
Apparently they believe that all of these drug cartels are buying single family, but they can't just buy commercial family or commercial properties and do the exact same thing. It's only going to happen in residential.
It's only,
right?
and I think the argument there is that there's not, AJ, how many people are buying self-storage units cash? Not that many, right? I mean, there's not that many. Same thing. Well,
you could buy a 5-unit though.
You could buy a 5-unit, correct, and that would not count as that's technically kind of a commercial loan. But yeah, it's only residential 1 to 4. So if you're selling a residential or transferring, it affects me because to me it's an asset protection. It really affects you guys that are buying real estate for your investments. You've got single family homes, you've got your rentals, even you syndicators or you big time players. All of us have these little. Even Jay, you've got you got a few single family rentals still left in Florida, as you always talk about. I know you're trying to get rid of them, but if you own single family rentals for investment purposes and you want to transfer them into an LLC for asset protection purposes, for example, which is what you should be doing. Well, that is a transfer from you individually into an LLC for no consideration, right? You're just transferring it. Like
Mauricio, I thought that got cut out though. So that was in the proposed.
Nope, it did not get cut out.
If I transfer from my personal name, so that's just my personal house, and I want to transfer from my personal name into a land trust, then that doesn't cover it anymore. That was in the original proposal, but it was cut.
Yeah, let me get to the exemptions there. That's the exemption that they have, but that doesn't affect your asset protection purposes. So yes, they carved out an exemption for estate planning, right? So people who generally transfer assets in their personal name into a trust, into a living trust is usually what they use. But yeah, to the same point, a land trust, same thing. If you're transferring it into a land trust or transferring into your living trust for estate planning purposes, and it has the exact same grantor or settler as the owner, then that's going to be exempt. The problem is, as we've talked about many, many times, is that a land trust or a living trust, they don't have any asset protection purposes whatsoever. They have no value from an asset protection standpoint. It's literally an estate planning tool. So if you want the asset protection, you need to transfer it into an entity or an LLC, which this does cover. And so if it's a residential, there's no financing, and you're transferring it into an entity or a trust, then there's two separate reports that you have to make. One is the real estate report, and then the other is the beneficial ownership. So you need to report the transaction itself. So the street address of the property, land, the legal description of the property, the closing date of the property, and how much you paid for it. But in addition to that, you've got to report the beneficial ownership of whatever entity it got transferred into, which to me is a little bit of an overlap because you've already created an LLC and you've already got the Corporate Transparency Act filings over here, but now you're gonna have to do it again. It's all like a double whammy. And this has to happen within 30 days of either 30 days from the transfer of the property, or you've got till the end of the month or the following month. It's somewhere between 30 and 60 days that you have to make this thing. But yeah, Kyle, to your point, there's an estate planning exemption. That's one of there's a bunch of exemptions, but none of them really apply to us. You're transferring to a bank or to, a qualified intermediary if you're doing
or if you die, Mauricio, that could apply.
You could have, but from an asset protection standpoint, when you transfer it to a land trust, it has no value from an asset protection standpoint. Same thing as a living trust. It has estate planning purposes. But if you want to transfer to an LLC for asset protection purposes, then you're going to have to, somebody on that list is going to have to
so for the whole LLC, the way I read this is only for trusts, because I know. I just hear me out. Let me finish. They're only doing this for trusts, because if they're doing it for LLCs, to your point, we already have the Corporate Transparency Act. So if we're transferring real estate into an LLC, that LLC has already been filed with FinCEN, who owns that, who has the beneficial ownership of that. So they already have that information. There's no reason to have to do this. But for trusts, you don't have to. And if it's a single party to, like, between you and me as individuals, like, they obviously don't need it. They have our information. It's on there. So to me, I read this is only for trusts. The only reason they're doing this is for trusts. Why else would they be doing it?
You're 100%. The beneficial ownership information, there might be a mechanism, and that you caught that because you've already filed the beneficial ownership of the LLC, you might be able to use an identifier to just kind of report it again. But what the Corporate Transparency Act does not cover is the actual. They don't know what's inside the trust. You set up an LLC, you've got to describe what who the owners are of the LLC, but they don't know what's in it. They don't know if you own real estate or gold or a business. They don't have any information about what's actually inside that LLC or what's being transferred. And that's what this real estate report covers, is they want to know what's in it. If you're transferring real estate, basically the government wants to know anytime you transfer real estate, they want to know about it. Now, they've already got the financing covered because there's already a Bank Secrecy Act, and the financial institutions are already making that report without your knowledge, but they've got the ability to make those suspicious reports now. And now they're going to cover non-financial transactions so that they can close the loop, because they think that's a little bit of a, to your point, if the gangs want to come in or the mafia wants to come in and buy residentials, they can start transferring stuff without you knowing. So there might be a mechanism where you can use the same information on the beneficial ownership, but that's only one of the two reports. What they really want to know is the specifics of the transaction. And it absolutely goes into entities. It's not just trusts, it's entities, LLCs, limited partnerships, corporate. Not that you would transfer stuff into a corporation, but any type of entity is what has to get reported on your real estate report.
See, that's where I thought it was a huge overstep. It was one thing to like, okay, we want to know who's doing these transactions. We don't want, it's arguably okay. Like, I want to know if these drug cartels are transferring. So I want to know who's behind these trusts and who's behind these LLCs. But where I thought it was like getting pretty crazy is that they want to know, like, whether or not credit was extended. So like if I bought a property and I got a loan from AJ, just a private loan from AJ, they want to know about it. They want to know who it's from, and they want to know, not only that, they want to know where it's coming from, and they want the information of the bank account of where it's coming from, of not only me who's paying, but AJ who's giving me a loan on that. So like, just
this only covers non-finance transactions. That's what this report covers. Residential, so 1 to 4 unit homes, and it covers non-finance transactions. Those are the two kind of qualifying. And then it has to be.
Why do they need to know money on who's loaning me money? I guess is my thing. Why do they
They
need
don't.
that?
That's what I'm saying. That's not part of the real estate report. The report only requires the information about the property, where the location of the property, the legal description, how much you paid for it, and the closing date. That's what they want on the real estate report. And then in addition to that, they want the beneficial ownership information. And to your point, that should have already been provided. Although, I mean, arguably, you've got 90 days to file the beneficial owner information. You've only got 30 to 60 days to file this one. But that one overlaps on.
And isn't all this already on a 1099-S? Like whenever you buy and sell a property, if you're selling a property, you got to fill out a 1099-S. Like, isn't that already on there? And when we do these like trusts and don't we need EINs? Don't they already have that information there? Like when they asked about it, because they had the comment period and they asked about this, and the answer from FinCEN was, "Oh, we can't easily access the IRS information." So basically, they're going to put all this on us just because they can't get their shit together and access other government.
That's the problem. It's a compliance, even if it doesn't necessarily affect you directly, somebody has to do all this compliance. And if it's for example, if it's the person who's underwriting, that's the fourth person on this list, is the underwriter who's issuing title, for example. Right? That person now has compliance stuff. It's going to get added to the cost of you getting title insurance. It just adds another regulatory cost to the process. And if it's an attorney, because sometimes the attorney is the closing person, sometimes the attorney is the one that's filing the deed or preparing the settlement statement. If it's an attorney, well, they're just going to add their attorney fees to whatever this filing is.
It's funny you bring that up because when I was researching this, the only two places that I could see people talking about it were, well, I'll let you guess. Who do you think the two people who are talking about this are?
Well, I would think anybody who potentially is in this cascade of people who have this obligation on their plate, so including lawyers. I mean, lawyers can show up in a bunch of different places. So lawyers for sure would be talking about it.
Well, so the first one you already said is the title people, right? Because the title people are freaking out right now because they're like, what are we going to have to do in all these transactions? What are we going to have to do? And then the other one you already hit on too was asset protection. So anybody who's in the business of creating asset protection entities, trusts, and stuff like that, they're the ones talking about it. No one else is talking about that. But the third one that I think actually people should be talking about are sub 2 people. Subject 2 people, it was a lot easier prior to all of this happening to get these subject 2 deals done. Before, the beneficial ownership information, like now when you're doing these subject 2s because I know they like to use trusts and they like to use these kind of simple methods so that like it doesn't flag on the bank and it doesn't do all these different things. Now they're going to have to jump through a lot more hoops in order to get these sub 2s. The person who's selling it has to give all their information. You're going to have to, if you're doing a sub 2 deal, you got to be like, hey, give me your social, give me the bank account information for this, give me all these things because I got to submit them to FinCEN. Like to me, the sub 2 people should be a little bit worried that this is going to muck up their deals.
Yeah, and you got to remember, you fit into one or two camps, right? One camp, Jay, I'm going to throw you under the bus on this camp, I think, which is like who cares? Like, right, I got to give the government some information. I got to give them my driver's license. I got to give them my social security. I got to report, like, whatever, who cares? And then there's the side of people who are like, I don't want to give information. This is my private information. This is a private transaction between me and Kyle, or private transaction between me and my own LLC. Why should the government get involved? And why should I have to report all this private information to the government? Those are it just depends on where you fit in the spectrum. For a lot of people, this is not a big deal at all. It's just, it's a pain, but it's really, who cares? I'm not going to be the one filling it out. And, maybe it's going to cost me more to do a transaction.
Just like when they passed the Patriot Act, it wasn't a big deal, right? We just given up a little bit of our privacy in order for the government to be able to protect our safety, because they're only ever going to use it for protecting us from foreign adversaries and terrorists who are looking to harm America, right? Like that's all they're ever going to use it for.
Well, that's the argument too. It's like the corporate transparency, and I believe the same thing here, is that the information is only available to the governmental agencies, right? It's only available to the IRS. It's only available to the government, to law enforcement, to the FBI.
You want me to list off the 6 just to make you feel better?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So we have obviously federal agencies. That's one. U.S., state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies can access this. So, therefore now we're getting into, okay, what can we get all of a sudden we could say, hey, this is for legal purposes. We're going to get a warrant and we're going to access your information. I'm sure that's not going to get broad at all. Foreign law enforcement agencies. So same thing applies. Financial institutions can access this as well. Federal regulators, so federal regulating agencies. So I guess you could say that's a government. And then finally, treasury officers and employees. So there are 6 different ways that this information can be accessed, and I'm sure none of them ever get hacked, or none of them ever leak information either too. So like, this is our, whatever information that we give on our private entities is going to be completely safe with all of these different.
Sorry, one last point. I'll let you go, Jay. The other thing we don't know, because I haven't, not that I've really been paying attention, but I'll start looking around. But the question is always, hey, if somebody starts making a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, will they be able to get access to this stuff? If a private attorney wants to do a FOIA to the government agencies to get access to the data because they want to do a lawsuit or they're in the middle of some big litigation, is that something they're going to be able to get access to? And that's going to be, we don't know. These are all, well, this one hasn't even come into effect, but the Corporate Transparency Act has.
Well, Patriot Act was passed as an anti-terrorism law. You know what it's mainly used for now? Patriot Act power?
Spying on their own people?
For drug search warrants and computer crimes. So I'm sure whatever the government's passing this as an anti-money laundering, but I'm sure whatever information they're taking from us, they're never going to use it for anything other than anti-money laundering.
You want to know what the penalties are, Kyle? It took me a while to figure out the penalties part, but you want to hear the penalties?
Is it not? Is it not the same as the CTA?
No. So this one's. I saw all these different ones. I had actually this one. I probably spent more time looking at trying to figure out the violation than I did actually going through the stuff. But so it's adjusted to inflation, so it's a random number. It's $1,394 per violation, unless you're like a frequent, like it just happens all the time. Then it can go up to $108,000, and if you willfully not do it, whatever the terminology is, you could face up to $250,000 and 5 years in jail, plus additional civil penalties of about $69,000 or the value of the transaction. Whatever.
Who's the penalty on? Like, did they just go down that little cascade?
Yeah, whoever's that cascade. Yeah. So what's going to happen, I think, from a practical standpoint, is every time you have a real estate, again, more cost or more paperwork, somebody's going to get designated. Somebody's going to agree to be the designated person to file this. So if you're the title company, you either say, "Hey, I'll do it, and we'll charge another $150," or, "Hey, I'm not doing it. You got to do it. The attorney, you've got to do it." They'll start picking, and you can designate somebody on that list to be responsible. But somebody's going to be responsible for filing, I think. And if nobody steps up, it's going to go through the pecking order.
Jay, chime in. You were about to say something.
Yeah, Jay. How thrilled are you about this?
I got nothing. Kyle was talking about the 6 agencies that can access the data. I was hoping he had 4 more, so then we wouldn't have to do a top 10.
Oh, that would be awesome. Maybe we can do top 10 agencies. Can we do top 4 more? What do you want to do instead of the top 10, Jay?
Well, I have a top 10, and it's actually it's surrounding what we're talking about here. So I'll just lead right into that, because data breaches. We're talking about when you give the government data that, it's very secure, right? It's the government, like they're not going to read. So how many? I'll ask Jay. Since you're the one who's so engrossed in this, how many major government data breaches do you think there have been in history?
How many major? What's the definition of major?
I don't know what government means, and I don't know what major means. But
well, just guess. Just guess.
Let's go with 1 a year. Oh, I guess computers have only been like, let's say.
I can see you looking this up, Jay. You're such a cheater.
I'm not looking it up. I was going to say.
I can see it, Jay, in the reflection of your glasses. I could totally see the screen.
You like lean in and you look like this, and you're like, I'm not looking.
I'm not. My hands are under the table. You'd be surprised what my hands are doing right now.
I'll skip to the punchline. There were 11 major data breaches in government last year. So in 1 year, there was 11 major government data breaches, and I'll just go through a few of them, just to make you guys feel better about how the government, when we give them their data, that it's fully secure. So the Department of Health and Human Services, that's a government that's completely secure. They were breached twice. Medicare and Medicaid raid, ransomware attack. So that was the big one that happened. Department of Treasury last year, twice. IRS coding error was one of them, where they accidentally disclosed people's IRS 990T forms.
I remember
just
that.
Openly.
I remember that. Didn't Elon Musk show up on some list or something? All the big donors.
Department of Justice. You heard of those guys, right? They were hacked last year twice. A ransomware attack. They And that was mainly so any U.S. military personnel and legal processes were all released. And then finally, Department of the Interior, an unauthorized developer modified a security policy, resulting in 24,000 affected individuals' personnel records being exposed.
But is there anything you can do about that? I mean, I'm no computer expert or anything, but I just feel like no matter how secure these things, as secure as they get, even these huge corporate like Target, right? They got hacked a couple years ago or whatever with all the. I mean, these mega corporations who don't lack resources to use whatever server and technology they're supposed to use. It sounds like no matter how robust security is,
But you know what the difference between mega corporations and the government is? I can choose whether I give them my information or not.
Well, and Mauricio, here's the perspective I always look at when it comes to computer hacking and stuff like that. If you're the best at what you do, and you have a choice, are you going to go and work on a government budget, or are you going to work outside of a government budget? So the government can only spend so much on their security, and if you're the best at what you do, where are you going to go? You're going to go where you're going to make the most money. And to me, it's just that simple. So they're always going to be. It's the same thing when people say, "Oh, we're going to make the billionaires pay their fair share." Okay, who do you think gets paid more? The people at the IRS coming up with the laws that are trying to make sure that billionaires pay their fair share, or the accountants that the billionaires are paying to make sure that they don't pay their fair share. So when you want to look at a losing battle, you just follow the money. It's just like anything else to me.
But if we give the government more control and more information, they'll fix it. That's how it always works.
Yeah, I thought Jay was going to call me out on that because last time I was trying to get the government to step in more, and now I'm trying to say like the government's got to step out of here.
AJ, the government is here to help you, man.
It's here to help you. Just give them.
I set up a game for the end of this. I kind of look stupid for doing it because I thought we were dressing up in Halloween costumes. And my game was going to be, what is your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever worn?
I like it. I was gonna wear it today. I totally forgot. Like nobody reminded me, but I actually have a great.
I was going to go through the list, and I was going to have people reminisce about their favorite Halloween costume. Maybe it was a simpler time, or back in 2016 when times were good. But Mauricio, what was your favorite Halloween costume you ever did?
I still have it. I actually, I haven't done too many of these, but I think I collect all of my outfits or whatever. But my favorite one, very simple, very wholesome, very non-dramatic, is just the Clark Kent, where you have the Superman thing underneath, and you basically wear a suit with the Superman thing, and then you put these glasses on, like the Clark Kent glasses, and you open up your shirt, and you've got the tie. So you're Clark Kent, but you're kind of almost opened up with the Superman. I thought that was just an easy, and always enjoyed that one.
You have a picture of yourself in that one?
I do somewhere. I don't know. I'd have to pull it up, but yeah,
you got to drum it up. I feel like these costumes that we say we should drum them up and find photos, and we should post them just as a fun thing. AJ, what do you got for us?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross. I'm sure you only needed a wig too. You got the beard already,
right?
Jay, what do you got?
I'm trying to remember any of my Halloween costumes. Yeah, I got nothing.
Of this group, it's not surprising that Jay is not a fun Halloween costume guy. I had so many that I had to like narrow it down to like the best ones, and then I had to ask my wife which ones I was allowed to say because a few of them were not. So and what she did let me say is me and my wife dressed up as a stripper and a pole.
Which one were you?
I was the stripper, obviously. And so I was a female stripper.
I thought you'd be the big stick winging stick pole.
No, so I was a female stripper. So I wore Ashley's outfit with a wig, and then Ashley dressed up as a pole. So she was just complete silver, painted face silver all the way, and she just had to walk around all day with her hands up in her hair, and I would just do stripper routines on her all night. So that was our most fun.
I like it.
All right.
This is a short episode, just like Jay wanted it to be, nice and short and sweet.
Well, that happens when he doesn't say a single word on the second topic, just because he's grumpy because I wouldn't get rid of it.
That's a good point. You can look at the average episode where Jay is presenting a topic, and you can just see now how much time he usually takes up because it literally is a third of the podcast.
And he's still not saying anything. Are you really this grumpy that we actually picked the topic that we decided to pick from last week?
I'm not grumpy at all. I just I didn't feel like there was that much to talk about.
Because you didn't read the article.
No, because Mauricio did such an amazing job of covering all angles of the topic and answering all of my
Because it's not
questions
his topic.
before I even knew that I had them.
Don't worry. Next week we'll do an economic update, so you can talk about the Treasury curve and.
Yeah. So next week, are we going to wait till after the election and we're going to do an election episode, or are we going to go before the election? What do we decide?
We're gonna talk about the election after it's done, but we're gonna release it before the election, so it looks like a really predictive thing.
Oh, that'd be awesome. We should do that every time.
Wow. If we could pull that off, I have a lot better things that we should figure out and go back in time and do than an election, like the stock market, things like that. But I love it.
Would you? Here's a question: if you could go back and kill baby Hitler, would you be able to do it? Like murder a baby?
Wow.
No.
No.
I like to think that I could. Like, I like to be like, oh, yeah, it's freaking Hitler. I'd go back and I'd see the baby and I'd be like, I can't freaking do this. Like, could we wait till he was like 18? And then I'd be like, yeah, I'm all about it.
Maybe you could take it and adopt him and make him into a nice person.
Like, take him to a different country. Like,
yeah, that's true. Take him to Norway.
Yeah, you're going to Samoa.
Or Poland.
You will now be raised in Samoa. Good job. Like, get him out of Germany.
I would just say, like, I assumed he liked the blonde hair, blue eyes. So take him to Scandinavia somewhere. You know, that's it.
Now, get him out of Europe. No blonde hair, blue eyed people. Nope, he doesn't get them. Nope.
Stick him in Japan. Take him in Tokyo City.
Exactly. That's exactly. No, not even Japan. Are you kidding? They were allies. Get him out of those countries.
Okay. I don't know. Jay, do you think you did enough to deserve a plug here, or was it 1 out of 2? Is that you still get a plug out of this?
I'm gonna plug. I have an event next Tuesday. I hope everybody shows up
with this enthusiasm. I'm sure they will.
I hope they do. Show up, vote, and go home.
Well, what's the event?
Oh my God, Jay.
You didn't even tell us what the event
whatever meds you were on before, you need to get back on them, because like this is like there's something wrong with you right now.
I thought it was me. I thought it was me. I thought it was me. I'm like, oh crap, I wasn't listening and I totally didn't hear it.
No, Mauricio. You did awesome. It was great. It's him.
Mauricio still doesn't know if we're making fun of him or me.
Oh my God. Are we making fun of me or him or the Winnie the Pooh?
What do you think I'm talking about, Mauricio?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I kind of zoned out when you were talking.
I'll let you guys tell them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Kyle and I are like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, Jay. I've never heard of this event on Tuesday. Are you doing like a meetup or?
This is a inside joke, Population 1, where Jay has a joke.
There's a fucking presidential election on Tuesday. I said, show up, vote, go home. How hard was it to figure out?
We're making fun of you.
I thought it was go to your meetup, and then go vote.
We've got the guy that doesn't celebrate Halloween. We've got the guy who's Canadian.
Hey, this is my first vote. My first ability to vote.
Who are you voting for, Kyle?
I don't want to say.
Who are you voting for, Kyle?
You go first.
Who am I voting for?
Yeah.
I voted for Kamala.
You already voted?
I did. It's almost certain that the Senate is going to be red, and I want a split. I want separations of powers, and so
if the Senate was going to be blue, you would have voted for Trump.
I would not have voted.
Oh.
You know what's an interesting statistic that I looked up the other day?
I would have been happy not to vote for Kamala, but I was not going to vote for Trump.
So there's the term is split ticket. So that's what means when somebody votes like all Republican, but then votes for the Democratic like president. It's called split ticket. And you know how often that happens? So when it happened, when I can only go back to 2020. So back to 2020, on the Democrat side, it happened so everyone, they voted all Republican and voted Democrat president. That happened 1.9% of the time. On the flip side, where they voted all Democrat and voted Republican president, it only happened 1% of the time. which made me think like all the like there's billions of dollars being spent on these like Senate and Congress ads and all this stuff, and it's only less than 2% of people aren't just going to vote for the same party as they're voting for the president. Which
So who are you voting for, Kyle?
I didn't think you'd actually tell people.
I did.
I'm not going to say it.
Who are you voting for?
I'm not telling you.
Why?
Because it's a private matter between me and my family, Jay.
Then why'd you already tell us before the show?
Well, it's private between you're part of my family, I guess.
AJ, who are you voting for?
Definitely Trump. Let's go around. I didn't want to.
Okay.
I hadn't voted for him before, but
There you go. Mauricio, who are you voting for?
I don't know if I'm in California, dude. I don't know. I'm not voting for either one of them. The question is, am I going to the polls to? I'm debating on whether I need to go figure out all of these local, state issues, which I have to educate myself. But I will not be voting for either one of those two bozos.
So we got one Kamala, one Trump, one not voting.
I might vote for RFK.
that's my vote too. I'm voting for RFK Jr. also. That's actually true. And I told you guys that I was going to vote for RFK before. I still am. So
The reason I brought up split ticket is that I am voting split ticket, where I'm going to vote different for all of the undercard, and I'm going to
Who are you voting for the top of the ticket, Kyle?
Well, you can determine based off of my previous podcast episodes. You could probably figure it out.
I can't.
What do you mean you can't? I already told you what I'm doing. You're just trying to egg it
If
out.
I
of me
didn't
for-
know, I wouldn't
All right,
know.
Jay, you had your chance to talk for the podcast. You failed to talk, so now we're
AJ, who do you vote for? AJ, what do you got to plug?
podcasts. I actually did a more of a political podcast that's coming out, I think Thursday. Yeah. So it's coming out like tomorrow, whatnot. And it was really just like a walk down. It wasn't Kamala versus Trump, but it was more like an underpinning of my political kind of belief set and how that actually plays into my investing and entrepreneurship and how those things tie in. So I didn't talk about either one of the candidates today, but I just talked about more of my political. So anybody wants to know more about that for some reason, check it out. YouTube channel, AJ Osborne, go for it.
I will check that out, actually. Mauricio.
Well, continuing on the theme of the elections, Amanda Hahn, CPA extraordinaire, and I, or actually really, she's going to be a guest on Real Estate Syndicate Live, but we're moving it to Thursday. We usually do it today on Tuesday, but this Thursday, which I think is the day the pod comes out, but Thursday the 31st, Halloween, 1 o'clock, 11:30 Pacific as usual. Amanda Hahn, Mauricio, we're going to go through the tax policies of both candidates, so you can be well informed prior to vote, as opposed to Jay just making shit up and voting split ticket. RealEstateSyndicatorLive.com.
Are you going to dress up for that one since it's actually on Halloween?
Well, I think that I might be in the middle of setting up my Christmas tree. I may have to take a break from setting up the Christmas tree to do the podcast. I'm not sure I'll be able to be in a Halloween costume.
All right. Well, as always, I'm going to plug my wife, Badass Investor. Go check her out. Instagram, YouTube at Badass Investor. She is much better looking than Jay and also smarter and gives you better information. So go follow her, not Jay.
Who's she voting for?
I'm not going to speak on her behalf, but she's a vegan. So
I like how he'll ask the question. He'll ask the question, but he won't answer him.
She's a
the
vegan.
best answer anyone's ever given, right there. The best
She's a vegan,
answer
so I'll
anyone's ever
let
given.
you. She's a female and a vegan, so I'll let you extrapolate.
And she's awesome.
And we have 2 daughters who she really cares about. So if you want to talk about big ticket issues,
So you're saying AJ doesn't care about his kids? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is that
No,
what you're saying, Kyle?
That's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah.
I was pointing out what her biggest issues are.
Kamala doesn't have any kids, right?
She has 2 kids.
Step kids, they're just
Okay.
as hard, Mauricio.
Oh, they're just as hard?
I have no idea. I don't have step kids, but she says they are.
Ashley says that you're stepkids?
No, Kamala says step kids. Jeez. All right, I'm done with this podcast anyway. All right. You guys didn't even ask me what I was drinking, so I don't even have to say when my drink is gone because it's been gone for a while.
What were you drinking, Kyle?
This is what I was drinking. I got so fed up with you guys that I went and got the cheapest bourbon. It comes in like gallons. It's called Evan Williams, bottled in bond. It's
You
bottled
had
in
1
bond.
gallon.
It's 100 proof, and the government has to certify it. That's what bottle and bond means.
You guys should be happy that I said who I was voting for. So now you don't have to worry about any negative comments about you guys in the comments.
Well, I thought you were going to say
there are going to be no negative comments about this episode except the ones directed at me.
I thought you were going to pull a Larry David, Jay, where you're going to be like, "Oh, well, I'm voting for Kamala, and Jay or AJ, you're voting for Trump. Well, let's just both skip. We cancel each other out."
That's a good point.
That is.
Have you seen that episode? That's the greatest. He's waiting in this like huge line for waiting to vote, and he's just sitting there. He's like, like he's obviously pissed off and waiting in the line. He taps the guy on the shoulder, and he pegs his like the opposite side. He's like, "Hey, who you voting for?" And he's like, "This guy." He's like, "Well, I'm voting for the other guy. You want to go get a drink instead?" He's like, "Yeah." So the two of them leave and go get a drink because they cancel each other out. All right. So my drink's gone. I'm gonna go hit the head. I'm gonna put on my real Halloween costume just because I feel like as we say goodbye, and I will see you next Tuesday.
Oh, now we know who he's voting for.
See you guys.
Wait.